Hey guys, so this is the Tyro129, and if you've been thinking about getting something for long range FPV but thought the cost was too high, definitely should check this one out. It is a kit, you have to build it, but it's pretty easy, and I'll have all the videos to help you put this together and set it up. Obviously for long range you need GPS, and it has GPS rescue setup as well. It's an incredible value at $129. There was another 7-inch pre-built drone, was about $300, so it's less than half. Of course, you do have to put it together. I have broken up this video into several shorter videos so that you guys can go over each video one by one to get this set up and get ready for your first long-range FPV flight. Yeah, at $129, if you lose this in the mountains somewhere, not a big deal. So that's why I think this is a good one if you want to get started in it and try it out. So anyway, there's going to be a link down in the description to the playlist to all the rest of the videos in case you missed the previous ones or the ones that are coming later, so you can get the complete picture on how to put this together and do your first long-range FPV flight for very, very little cost. Okay, so putting the frame together is actually simpler than I thought it was going to be. Let me just point out a couple things here. So the shorter screws, or the shortest M3 screws here, are not used in the building of the frame, or at least the bottom part of the frame, as they're going to be for the motors and for the standoffs that go to the top plate. And that's, I'll talk about that in a second. Basically you need these parts here. So you have your press fit nuts, your standard nut, and then you have the second longest screw and the longest screw. So the longest screw is going to go into the center part here with the press fit nut, and the reason you have this little exposed piece of screw is for the nylon standoffs. It's going to go on here for mounting of the stack, the 30x30 stacks. That's what that's for. And then the standard nut and the shorter of the screws is going to go on the outside of these two holes that mount the arm. And that is pretty much it. So you have the longest screw in the middle and the shorter, or the middle size screw on the outside. Longest screw here, middle size screw there, and of course you have the sandwich plate on the bottom, the main bottom plate here, and then the arms like this. Now do keep in mind you have to pay attention to how you have your, because there's only 3 holes here, how you have your arms oriented, so otherwise they'll be kind of mixed up. I put the one basically where there's no screw hole, I put that on the inside, so if you crash you want this part here to be protecting the front, so that's why I oriented it that way. I think in their photos it's the other way around, and I didn't like that, so this is the way I did it. So the front of the frame is here, so the back, and yeah, it's 280 millimeters motor. It's the I think it's a TrueX setup. So the rest of the frame is going to be easy to put together. You just put the standoffs here with the shortest screws and the top plate along with the 2 camera side plates. That's pretty self-explanatory. And now on to the rest of the build. Okay, so this is just a quick look at the connections to all the devices on the flight controller. I'm using all of the wiring looms that were provided. So this one here goes to the 4-in-1 EC, and it doesn't matter which side you use. It's reversible, so don't worry about that. That seems to be fine. This one here above the 4-in-1 EC connection is one for the camera, and I kind of figured out these just by process of elimination and figuring out where the red wires and black wires are for power and ground. So the camera goes to this one here. This one here is for the VTX. And something I noticed is that the wire for the TX3, the smart audio, is not in here, so I'll have to source a wire for this plug on both ends here. It's yeah, I'm not sure why they removed that. That should be in there. I'm going to make a note of that and let Eachine know about this problem, because that should be there, and otherwise you can't use smart audio. And then this one here goes to the GPS, and there's a 4-pin connector on this side, and this uses the 5V ground, TX and RX here, and then the SDA SCL connectors on 2 in here are empty. That's for a compass that this is not going to be using. And then this one right here is for the receiver. As you can see right there, RCN. Now there's some pads here for PPM, DSM, and iBus here, so I think maybe if you're not using S-Bus, you could solder to one of these 3 pads for those, and then you have some additional solder pads here for some additional UARTs here and also here. And that's pretty much it. So as you see, no soldering here for all of the different devices. Obviously I'm going to have to solder up a receiver, haven't decided that yet, and the XT60, and of course the motor wires, but this should be pretty easy to put together. Basically you're going to put the 4-in-1 EC on first, then you're going to put on some more standoffs, then the flight controller, some more standoffs, and then the video transmitter, and then the nuts on very top. So I'll show you that once I put that into the frame. And actually, before I put this in, I'm going to go ahead and solder up the XT60, then put all the stuff in, and then I'll show you what that looks like with the motors mounted before I solder up the motor wires. But yeah, this build shouldn't take too long. Okay, so I'm at the point where I'm ready to solder on the motor wires. Just want to show you what I did here. Went ahead and soldered on the XT60 connector. That was pretty easy. Just run the wire up through the holes and then just solder from above. Pretty solid there. And I'm going to do the same with the motor wires. I'm going to run, basically, there's holes there. You should be able to run these wires up through the holes and solder from above. So I'm going to solder them first and then go ahead and mount the motors to the arms. And I'm already putting the heat shrink around the motor wires in advance. I'll shrink that down probably later at the end, but just you obviously have to put this on first, otherwise you can't get this on later once you solder on the motor wires. So I'm going to solder on the motor wires and then mount them to the arms. The one with the black nuts are going to go, let's see, this is the back and that's the front, so this is the rear right. This is going to be the first, or motor 1 will be a black nut, a silver one over here, a black nut over here, and a silver nut over here. This is assuming standard prop rotation where the props are spinning in and into the front, not reverse. So this is standard normal rotation. So this will go this way, and then this one will go, motor 2, 3 will go in this direction here, in towards the back and in towards the front. So that's how I'm going to solder that up, and I'll show you what that looks like. The rest of this stuff is all plug and play. The VTX already just plugged in here, and I'll plug in all the other parts like I showed you in the earlier part of the video. Okay, so I got the motors mounted and the wires soldered in. Soldered the wires first, and then I mounted the motors, and just have the wires running up through the bottom, through those holes there that you saw earlier. So the wires run up through, and then I just soldered from the top. That seemed to be the simplest, and I think soldering the wires first is going to be easier because the wire is really stiff and hard to work with. So I think that if you mounted the motor first and then try to solder, it'd be a little more harder, more difficult. So solder the wires first, then you can just kind of push the wire in and kind of, shape it like this, and that ought to do it. And then you should be able to mount it. Make sure again, put the proper nut on the proper motor size. So this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. The rest is pretty simple. It's got to plug in all of our parts, camera, GPS, receiver, and put the top plate on. And this build is pretty much done. So I'll go ahead and finish it up, and I'll show you what it looks like completely assembled. Okay, so here it is all finished in terms of the assembly. Got the stack, I got the motor wire zip tied down here. I am going to do something with the GPS here. I'm probably going to create a little 3D print part and hang it off of the back here behind the VTX antenna instead of zip tying it to one of the arms. I think this is probably a better location than one of the arms in terms of not getting the signal box. I'm going to probably hang it here with some sort of part that hangs off of the antenna. So I'm going to make that. And, you'll see that a little bit later. Probably I'll show you that in the other later parts of the series. But yeah, this is pretty much it here. I just got screwed on the top plate, and the camera's already installed. Obviously, stick the antenna on there before I power it up. But everything is mounted. It's pretty much all done. I still have to put the receiver on there, and I'm going to be using one of these crossover receivers, these new ones that I just recently got for testing. And we'll see how this is just a FreeSky D16 receiver, nothing special there. Not really going to go super long range on the initial flights, maybe for future videos down the road, but that's it for this part. The next part will be the beta flight setup, as well as make sure that your motors are turning in the correct direction. So you're going to make sure that all that's set up, as well as make sure your radio is set up properly as well. So that'll be in the next part, in the next video, so stay tuned for that, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.